thankful and blessed. I know I said this the other day, but little things I learned from him, I listened to it. And that's what I'm saying we need to do. You need to listen. Listening is not hearing what people say. It's listening in your heart, right? I remember my music teacher taught us that when I was probably 5th grade or something. Her name was Liz Vincent. And I remember her saying there's a difference between hearing and listening. And she talked about how you can hear what's going on in your eardrum and not really be paying attention to it. But let it get down in your system, because the stuff he's going to teach us tonight, what I found out, and I was going to ask you if I get a chance later, what aggravates him the most as a doctor. And I bet he'll say one of the top things is people don't listen to him. And when I say listen, I'm talking about they don't do what he says. Probably. I'm not sure, I'm not too sure. But I've noticed that people can know certain things are causing them pain and sickness, and they still do it. Because they want to believe that what they're eating and drinking is okay because they like it. Instead of just admitting, just facing the facts, listen, this, whatever it is, it's causing me problems, I just need to cut it out of my life. And that's what Jeremy will do for you if you'll listen to him. So anyway, I want to hand these out, and we'll get them back up here somehow, but I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy so we can have a maximum amount of time.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm not used to wearing one of these. Usually when I do seminars and stuff, I have a little lapel mic, so I feel like I'm on the Star Trek Enterprise or something here. Those that don't know me, I'm Jeremy Thornton. I grew up in Stockton, Missouri, and I have been a chiropractor there since 1998, so almost 18 years now. I can't believe it's been that long, or that I'm that old. But the letters here, a lot of times you see people that have letters behind their name, and what all does that mean? The DC is Doctor of Chiropractic. That was my primary doctorate. And then I went into further education and got a diplomate of the American Board of Chiropractic Internists. So I am board certified in internal disorders and am a chiropractic internist. This is a diplomate of the Chiropractic Board of Clinical Nutrition, so I'm also a clinical nutritionist. And so my practice, a lot of people hear the word chiropractor, and that has a certain connotation to people. People a lot of times think you're a back doctor, or you're a neck doctor, or you do help with sprains and strains, and we do that. But, here in this part of the country, they call me a chiropractor. Does everybody use that, a choir? I'm a chiropractor. And in our office on a day-to-day basis, we do see our fair share of backs and neck problems, but we have a lot of patients that just come in for various health reasons. They may come in to us because they have some type of infection. They may come into us because they have chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or chronic headaches or migraines. And so we get to the pleasure of seeing patients for a wide variety of conditions, and we do, sometimes we do diagnostic work, we may do lab work or clinical studies, we may do hormone studies, whatever that patient might need. The only difference in our health clinic is that we approach it from a natural direction, or sometimes called functional medicine direction, where I really believe that most of our health conditions can be treated without drugs or surgery most of the time. Now, it doesn't mean I'm against medicine at all, and I'm not against drugs necessarily, but I don't believe they should be our first choice or the first round of care for most conditions. Anybody agree with me on that? And so I appreciate Pastor and Angie for talking about health, and you've heard them even at the pulpit with giving messages and talking about the importance of health, and we don't get that much in church. In fact, I would wager to say that pastors, on the average, generally aren't the picture of health. Would you agree with me on that? And sometimes us as Christians, when you look at Christians in general, we're not always the picture of health either. And I'm definitely not perfect, because you can tell I haven't missed many meals. But I do try to practice what I preach, and I hope to be able to share some things with you tonight that will change your life, improve your life, and improve the quality and the length of your life as well. I believe that life is more about quality necessary than quantity. I don't want to live to be 100 if from the time I'm 80 on, I'm an inmate in a nursing home drooling on a pillow. That's not my idea of living a long life. I'll take the 80 years, thank you, right? But that's not necessarily the way that our life has to go. We don't have to end up that way. We don't have to follow the pathway into chronic disease and illness if we apply some simple things in our life. And so are Christians in general a picture of perfect health? Oftentimes, no. This is an area that Christians generally talk about, and is not talked about in church. But we don't always abide by healthy things and healthy lifestyles, and I believe that shouldn't be so. Christians suffer from the same chronic diseases: heart disease, arthritis, diabetes, obesity, cancer, as the general population. I believe that God's people should not only radiate the joy and love of Christ, but should be a picture of health. And I believe that we'll see some things in God's Word that encourages that as well. I think we should display, what's the word I'm looking for? Spiritual health, and I think we should display physical health. I believe it's hard to be effective for Christ if we're ridden and burdened with chronic disease. Does that make sense? 1 Corinthians 2:19, do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your body. And I believe honoring God with our body can be taken in a number of directions, but one of those things is our health and how we take care of our physical body. Romans 12:1, therefore I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Another scripture that's probably rarely, if ever, preached from the pulpit is, be not among drunkards or among gluttonous eaters of meat, for the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and slumber will clothe them with rags. Okay? This is an area that I believe that many Christians choose to ignore, is their health and the fact that being a glutton, and in whatever form that leads in your life, not always about food, but being a glutton is a sin, and we need to face that. In the ancient church, gluttony was viewed as one of the 7 deadly sins. And we need to remember that self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit, right? So we can have control over what we put in our mouth, what we choose to eat, our lifestyle we choose to live, and we need to take control of that. God calls you to be a steward of your body because it's not really even yours. It's on loan, right? He expects you to take care of it and to take responsibility for it. God did not make it difficult or impossible to maintain our health. He provided everything we need. What has transpired over the course of time to rob us of our health? If He provided everything we need, where do I find it? If my health has declined, how can I get it back? So we're going to talk about some of those answers. All right, God did not hide the secret to health, just like He did not hide the secret of salvation. Health challenges can either bring us closer to or drive us away from God. You are valuable to God. He has a great future plan for you, and He needs you to be ready for it. And so that means that we need to be healthy as much as possible. God wants us to enjoy life. There's nothing more tragic as being alive, but not enjoying life. And Pastor mentioned John 10:10, I come that they might have life and they might have it more abundantly. Okay, and God can provide health and healing to us, but part of it's our responsibility. Do you agree? What has happened? Why are Americans suffering from chronic disease? Diabetes, cancer, arthritis, heart disease, autoimmune disease is through the roof, especially here in America. Many other health problems are zapping our quality of life, such as fatigue, depression, anxieties. We can't find anything wrong with you, so we're going to treat you for symptom deficit disorder. How many times do we go to the doctor with problems and we run the same blood tests and we're told that, nothing's wrong? And often the answer is, try this antidepressant, you must be depressed. God's original diet was in Genesis 1:29, and God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they will be yours for food. And I think that we get away from the original diet. We get away from our fruits and our vegetables and our nuts and our seeds, and we get into too much processed foods, packaged foods, fast foods, and that's where we can get into trouble. Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. And I don't believe he was necessarily talking about our diet or our health, but I believe we are destroying ourselves sometimes from lack of knowledge, or because we choose not to be aware of things and choose destructive lifestyles or destructive habits. When we're quick as Christians, I believe especially, we're quick to point fingers at people who smoke or who drink. But in my opinion, some of the lifestyles as far as what we eat and what we put in our body can be as destructive as those things. And so we need to be aware of that. According to the CDC, half of the population, 117 million people in the U.S. suffer from at least one chronic disease. Half suffer from at least one. 1 in 3 suffer from heart disease. That's a high number. 1 in 3. 1 in 11 suffer from diabetes. And a quarter of those don't even know they have it. Over 1 in 3 suffer from pre-diabetes. And 9 out of 10 don't know they have pre-diabetes. And usually those with pre-diabetes, unless they make some changes, will go on to develop diabetes within 10 years. So half of our population, and possibly half of us sitting in here, have either diabetes or pre-diabetes already. It's a sobering thought. I put down here, get your levels checked. If you don't have a doctor, find one and get an examination, get some blood work, and just see how you're doing. Get a starting point, see what your baseline is, and if there's anything you need to work on. 1 in 3 suffer from hypertension, high blood pressure. 1 in 10 suffer from chronic kidney disease. 1 in 60 have Alzheimer's disease, and it's growing. Osteoporosis is 1 in 6. Cancer, the probability of developing invasive cancer in males is 1 in 2. Females is 1 in 3. That's the newest research statistics on cancer. And these statistics represent only chronic disease and do not reflect infectious disease or syndromes or disorders. We're just focusing on chronic disease. Since the early 70s, when President Nixon declared the war on cancer, $2 trillion have been spent on conventional cancer treatment research, $50 billion in the U.S. each year. We are no closer to winning the war than we were on the day it was declared. More Americans will die of cancer in the next 14 months than have died from every war that the U.S. has fought combined. Cancer is about to replace heart disease as the number 1 U.S. killer, and it is already the biggest killer in many age groups. The National Cancer Institute has reported that 60% of all female cancers and 40% of all male cancers are directly associated with diet. We don't hear those numbers very often, do we? 60%, 40% directly associated with diet. And some authorities put that figure much higher, maybe 75 to 80% of cancers are related to diet. One example, women can reduce their long-term risk of breast cancer by 75% by eating ample amounts of fruits and vegetables that contain folate or folic acid. Optimal vitamin D levels may decrease your risk of all cancer by 77%. One vitamin, if we have optimum levels, can reduce our cancer risk by 77%. Who's had their vitamin D levels ever checked? Anybody? Wow, that's impressive. I'm pretty impressed by that. They say that for optimal cancer protection, heart disease protection, brain health, bone health, that we should shoot for at least 50 or above on our blood test, our traditional vitamin D blood test. And I see in our office, oftentimes I see values in the teens, 20s, sometimes single digits on vitamin D. The number one symptom of vitamin D deficiency is chronic pain. How many people have chronic aches or pains, arthritis, inflammation, that just simply have vitamin D deficiency? We don't get enough in our diet. And where we are in approximation to the equator and the amount of sun we get, we can't make up the difference often with sun exposure. And most of us aren't outside enough unless we have a job that gets us outside. Most of us work inside all day. We get off. It's dark or nearly dark when we get home. And we maybe get out and play on the weekends a little bit. But I would say 90% of the patients that I check in my office are vitamin D deficient of some degree. Poor modern diet combined with over and increasing toxic environment contributes to the escalating risk of cancer. At the beginning of the 20th century, only 3% of the population died of cancer. Now, 23%. What has changed? Foods, food additives, lifestyles, medications, water contamination, environmental pollution, pesticides, and we've largely just given over a responsibility for our health. We just think we should just be able to eat whatever we want and have good health, or the doctor should be able to prescribe something that's going to fix us if something's broken. And we have to take over responsibility of our own health and put some things into action. Food is marketed to you for your pleasure and convenience. It is marketed directly to children. Have you noticed on the cereal aisle where the cereals with the cartoon characters and the movie stars that the kids like, where they're at? They're right here at their height, aren't they? The boring cereals are way up here, right? The boring bran and healthy cereals that don't have pictures, they're way up here. But all of the marshmallowy, sugar, cartoon characters are right at kids' level, because they know that kids will get their parents to buy that cereal, right? Or they'll fuss until they do. American children consume more than 1/3 of their daily calories from soft drinks, sweets, salty snacks, and fast food. 1/3 of their daily calories. And as we're talking tonight, I'm going to share a lot of things that I think would be helpful. If as we go through this stuff, don't feel overwhelmed. Don't think, well, I can't do this stuff. It's too much. I don't want to change all of that. Even if you take away one thing tonight that you can implement that will improve your health, that's all we can ask for. Just find something that you need to work on, and don't focus on trying to fix everything at once. One thing at a time. Refined sugar is the greatest cause of disease in America. We put digging our graves with a fork. Every year, the average American eats approximately 175 pounds of refined sugar. Okay? What would that look like if we stacked 175 pounds of bags of sugar up here? That's a lot of sugar. Just imagine that. And the average American eats that every year. And that's average, so some of us eat less than that, and some of us eat more than 175 pounds of sugar every year. Prior to the turn of the century, the average consumption of sugar was only 5 pounds per person per year. Do you think our bodies have acclimated from 5 pounds of sugar a year to 175 pounds of sugar a year, that we can now safely consume that level without any side effects or health consequences? Definitely not. Sugar increases your chances of catching colds and flus by suppressing your immune system. I read a study about the immune system, and scientists were looking under the magnifying glass, and watching those white blood cells, and they would introduce a pathogen or a virus or something into that medium, and of course our immune system would just go bonkers and just attack it and gobble it up and devour it. Well, they'd put just a little bit of a sugar solution in that same media and add that pathogen back in. And it was almost like the white blood cells were drunk. They're just floating around, everybody's okay, and not even recognize that virus was there. Up to 5 hours, I believe, after the consumption of about the equivalent of a 12 ounce of pop, up to 5 hours, your immune system is suppressed significantly, up to 50% for 5 hours. So if we have another pop after 5 hours, we're going to be constantly suppressing our immune system and be at risk for infections, be at risk for developing cancer. Sugar increases the risk of ADD in both children and adults. It increases cholesterol, LDL, triglycerides, while lowering HDL, which is the good cholesterol. One thing that's interesting, how did God make sugar? Where did sugar come from? Anybody know? Sugar cane. It takes a 3-foot stalk of sugar cane to make 1 teaspoon of refined sugar. That's a lot of chewing to get to a teaspoon of refined sugar, Today, by the time the average child in the developed country turns 8, they've had more sugar in their lives than the average person did their entire lifetime a century ago. By the time they're 8, have had more sugar than they did their whole life. Standard American diet. Our annual soft drink consumption here in the U.S. averages more than 56 gallons per person per year for every man, woman, and child. Consumers plunk down more than $60 billion a year on soda. On average, teenage boys consume 3 to 7 cans of soda per day, over 1,000 sodas per year. Teenage girls consume 2 to 5 cans of soda per day, or over 800 sodas per year. We're seeing in our clinic, especially in teenage girls, osteoporosis. Osteoporosis in teenage girls especially, and largely because of phosphorus and soda consumption, leaching calcium out of the bones and causing bone weakening in 14-year-old girls. What are you actually drinking? This is just a highlight of different drinks here. This is just Coca-Cola, 15 teaspoons of sugar. Gatorade, 8.5 teaspoons. You can just read down through there. Mountain Dew, 15. Root beer, 17. Lemonade, 17 teaspoons. Sunny D, 13 teaspoons of sugar in one serving. All right, and this one is how other drinks line up. Most of the sodas are at least 15 teaspoons of sugar. And right down here is the American Heart Association recommended daily limit for men of sugar is right here, this red line. That's the daily limit. Look what one soda does as far as teaspoons of sugar. This down here is the recommended limit for females is 6 teaspoons of sugar in a serving. All right, this is where McDonald's started out. This was a large soda in 1955. McDonald's large soda in 1980 went to 21 ounces. McDonald's large soda in 1990 went to 32 ounces. And the large soda today are 44 ounces often, right? Route 44 from Sonic. I was at a seminar one time and we were getting to the gas station afterwards, and I saw this little boy come out of the gas station, what looked like a barrel, and he was holding it like this and walking out of the gas station. I'm thinking, what in the world is that? And it was a big blue tub, and I went inside and they had these things stacked nearly to the ceiling. It was, let's see, what was the size of it? 90-some ounces you could get for just $1 something. And this little kid had this big tub. I think he got tired. He could sit on it as a stool. It was so big. And he was just as happy as could be to have his barrel of soda. But it's so cheap, and it tastes so good. I like a little Dr. Pepper. And I could drink a whole lot of Dr. Pepper if I let myself. All right, working off the calories. From a 30-ounce soda, an hour of downhill skiing. A 40-ounce, it won't be until the 6th mile of your run that your body will start converting the last 100 of those calories. And that's just from one Route 44, 40-ounce, a 50-ounce. Walk for 4 hours straight at 2 miles per hour and you'd burn these calories. And here's where we get to those barrels of soda down here. Pretty crazy, isn't it? Think about it. But it's so easy to do, easy to consume. Sugar causes premature aging through loss of tissue elasticity and collagen. Lowers oxygen and feeds cancer cells, increasing the possibility of breast, ovary, prostate, rectal, pancreas, lung, gallbladder, and stomach cancer. Increases risk of diabetes, causes headaches, increases the chance of obesity. Let's see. One of the McDonald's comes to Africa. Okay. Those of you that have had or had cancer or had family members that had cancer, you've heard of a PET scan. Anybody heard of a PET scan before? A PET scan is where they inject this radioactive dye into the body, and then they take an image, right, to see what lights up. And what they're looking for is if there's cancer in the body, that area is going to collect, where that cancer is going to collect that radioactive dye and will show up as what they call a hot spot, right, on the image. Is anybody familiar with that? And but what do they connect to the dye that uptakes the reason the cancer draws it in so they can image the cancer? It's a sugar molecule attached. Cancer loves sugar, and they know that because that's why they use a PET scan to be able to see where cancer is still at. Maybe after they've done treatment, to see if there's still some cancer remaining, they'll do a PET scan, and that's all because cancer loves sugar. Or they wouldn't be able to see where that dye went. Cancer sucks it right up. All right, we've got to pick on some food additives, okay? One of my favorite to pick on is aspartame. NutraSweet Equal. Now, the newest name for it is kind of tricky. They call it amino sweet. That almost sounds healthy. You know, we hear about amino acids, right? Now it's amino sweet. Maybe it's healthy. It was approved in 1981. For 8 years, the FDA refused to approve it because of the seizures and brain tumors the drug produced in lab animals. And aspartame is, guys, it's in everything. I don't know if, does anybody know about aspartame or look for it? Of course, it's in diet stuff is where the claim to fame was because it's not sugar. It tastes sweet, but there's no sugar, right? So we were told that it was healthy for us because we could decrease our sugar consumption, right, to help us lose weight, help us to be healthier. But we found out now that that's all a lie. It makes sugar problems worse. It has all kinds of other health effects, headaches, bowel problems, skin problems, and it doesn't have the health benefits that we were told it has as far as diet and weight loss. Associated with over 92 symptoms. When the temperature of aspartame exceeds 86 degrees Fahrenheit, the wood alcohol in aspartame converts to formaldehyde and then to formic acid, which in turn causes metabolic acidosis. They want a little formaldehyde in their soda today. Okay, formic acid is found in the sting of fire ants. Formaldehyde is grouped in the same class of drugs as cyanide and arsenic, deadly poisons. Toxicity from these chemicals mimic multiple sclerosis, or MS, and causes systemic lupus. In the case of those misdiagnosed with MS, when in reality the disease is caused by methanol toxicity. Most of the symptoms disappear when discontinuing the product. Unfortunately, they found with lupus it's not as easily reversed. I've had multiple patients that have presented with trimmers in their hands. And with fear that we were dealing with MS or something like that. When come to find out with talking with them about their history, they were consuming a lot of aspartame. Okay, aspartame is in, of course, our diet pops. It's in virtually every chewing gum. Have you guys looked at the ingredients in chewing gum? This was frustrating for me. I was at Walmart one time and I wanted to find some chewing gum that didn't have aspartame in it. And I was looking at all the ingredients and looking at everything, and I couldn't find one, and I got frustrated, so I just grabbed a pack of Juicy Fruit, right? Juicy Fruit, how long has Juicy Fruit been around? Forever. Guess what Juicy Fruit now has in it? Aspartame. Why? I don't know. It's not diet. But I think Bubble Yum is one that doesn't have aspartame. I think the old Big League Chew, with the pouch that looks like tobacco, I believe that it doesn't have aspartame in it, but you'll have a hard time finding things like that don't. And if we're consuming that all the time, we could have some health effects from that. Other symptoms from methanol toxicity include fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, numbness in the extremities, muscle cramps, vertigo, dizziness, headaches, tinnitus, joint pain, depression, anxiety, blurred vision, memory loss. Aspartame causes the blood sugar level to run out of control and is especially detrimental to diabetics. All right, good morning. Let's have our Diet Coke for breakfast. Diet Coke, I find especially, is hard to get off of. Does anybody admit having trouble with getting off of diet sodas? I've had patients that wanted to get off and tried to get off and had a horrible time trying to give that up and would have withdrawal symptoms even trying to come off of that stuff. All right, MSG. Has anybody heard about MSG or side effects of MSG? The sodium salt of glutamic acid, it's a highly refined substance which actually looks a lot like table salt. It's added to huge quantities to most processed foods in manufacturing facilities. MSG overstimulates brain cell activity and can lead to numerous health problems, many of which mimic other disorders such as fibromyalgia or arrhythmias, but can go undiagnosed for decades, all the while creating a life of misery and disability for the unfortunate sufferer. MSGA is also found in some vaccines. MSG actually tricks your brain into thinking the food you're eating tastes good. I don't know if it's neat, but the interesting thing about MSG is in and of itself, it doesn't have a taste. It doesn't have a flavor. But it tricks your brain into believing that it does, and your brain likes the flavor of MSG. And they can put it in anything, and your body, your taste buds, will just light up and devour, anything that the MSG is in. So they can put it in inferior products. They can put a lot of junk in a product and use just very poor quality ingredients. But if they put a little MSG in there, tell you what, we'll eat the whole bag. It's really crazy. MSG intolerance is not an allergic reaction, but a powerful drug reaction. Let's see. It destroys brain cells. That's kind of scary. They call MSG a neurotoxin, and it excites brain cells virtually to death. Now, not just having a bag of chips, we're not going to have problems with that. But if we eat processed foods that have MSG every day, day in and day out, we're likely going to have some problems with our health. They can get tricky with MSG, those that don't know, and they can hide it and call it other things. If it wasn't hard enough to look for monosodium glutamate on the package, they can call it hydrolyzed vegetable protein or plant protein, autolyzed yeast, or yeast extract. And so those are some names that they can hide MSG and not call it MSG. All right, anybody ever have any questions? Don't hesitate to throw your hand up. All right, well-documented reactions to MSG. I'm not going to read all those, but you can glance up there. The thing that I've seen a lot with MSG is in chronic headaches. I've seen MSG be a source of chronic headaches, but it can affect us on many different levels. All right, food additives. I'm going to speed along here just a little bit because we've got so much material to cover. The American food industry uses 3,000 tons of food colorings per year. Many of the food colorings are suspected to cause reactions from hyperactivity to depression. Yellow dye number 5, tartrazine is a coal tar derivative, is known to cause allergic reaction. It is also linked to asthmatic reaction and thyroid tumors in rats. Yellow dye number 5, if you look at something that has color to it, you can tell that they've added color to a candy or a food item. Look and you can see what kind of dyes that these products use. Red dye number 40, many believe to cause hyperactivity and ADD. Yes?
You also have to be careful because red dye number 40 can also be found like white cake icing.
It doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, but it can.
Yeah, you'd think it'd have to be something red, right, to have red dye 40 in it. No, it doesn't. We found red dye 40 in macaroni and cheese. And I've found it in cake icing before, red dye 40. And then, of course, anything that's red or purple or orange or pink is likely to have red dye 40, so look for this one. I've had personal experience with red dye 40 with our kids, especially Jayla when she was a baby. She was a really mild-mannered and easygoing little girl, and something would switch in her. It was just like flipping a switch. And she'd become aggressive and hyper and just bounce off the wall. And it took us a while to figure this out. We actually did testing on her. And come to find out, she was allergic to red dye 40. When we found that out, we took that out of her diet, and she just mellowed right down, and we never had a lick of trouble. We'd know anytime she snuck and got a hold of some red dye. And interestingly enough, she even craved candy that was red. If she had her choice, every time she'd pick something that was red. And we know when she started bouncing off the wall, she got into some red dye somewhere. It's a big deal. But how many are kids that are in school and having trouble or struggling with their school, even medicated because they're too hyper, are on all the sugar, that are on all these food dyes, that are consuming chips with MSG, affecting brain activity? It's pretty startling to think that. And we see a lot of patients in our clinic that have some of these conditions. And these are the areas that we look at, and it can be life-changing to find out that this is going on and get the kids off of some of this stuff. It can change their lives. If food products were honestly labeled, we have heart disease spread right here, and colon cancer dogs, obesity pop, zero nutrition puffs. All right, of course, lifestyle, smoking, alcohol, physical inactivity. Stress is a huge one for us these days. Stress is a killer. And all of us are dealing with this one. We're constantly attached to our cell phones and our computers and our kids on their video games and their DVDs and their iPods, their iPads, and all this stimulation 24/7, and everybody's just stressed out, and it's affecting our health. All right, medication, prescription, drug spending has risen about 15% in the past few years. Americans now spend twice what they did in 95. Okay, in 92, 2 billion prescriptions were written, and in 2011 it was estimated to be 4 billion. More than 1/3 of those were purchased by seniors, even though they make up only 13% of the population. It is estimated that by 2025, all seniors will pay nearly 1/3 of their income on out-of-pocket health care costs, an increase of only 1/5 in 2000. Right now, it's estimated that most seniors, the average senior is on 13 different prescription medications. 13 different prescriptions. In 2012, the pharmaceutical industry spent more than $27 billion on drug promotion, more than $24 billion on marketing to physicians, and over $3 billion on advertising directly to us. That's a lot of power. That's a lot of money for advertising. Ask your doctor if this drug is right for you, right? We hear that on every commercial. Well, I'm happy to run some tests, but to be honest, I think it's all in your head. All All right. I'm going to read this. This is just a little funny story. God populated the earth with broccoli and cauliflower and spinach, green and yellow vegetables of all kinds, so man and woman would live long and healthy lives. Satan created McDonald's, and McDonald's brought forth a 99-cent double cheeseburger, and Satan said, "Man, do you want fries with that?" Man said, "Supersize them," and man gained pounds. God created the healthful yogurt that woman might keep her figure that man found so fair, and Satan brought forth chocolate, and women gained pounds. God said, "Try my crispy fresh salad," and Satan brought forth ice cream, and women gained pounds. And God said, "I've sent your heart-healthy vegetables and olive oil with which to cook them," and Satan brought forth chicken fried steak so big it needed its own platter, and man gained pounds, and his bad cholesterol went through the roof. And God brought forth running shoes, and man resolved to lose those extra pounds, and Satan brought forth cable TV with remote control, so man would not have to toil to change channels between ESPN and ESPN2. And man gained pounds. And God said, "You're running up the score, devil." And God brought forth the potato, a vegetable naturally low in fat and brimming with nutrition. And Satan peeled off the healthful skin and sliced the starchy center into chips, deep fat fried them, and created sour cream dip also. And man clutched his remote control and ate the potato chips swaddled in grease. And Satan saw and said, "It is good." And man went into cardiac arrest. And God sighed and created quadruple bypass surgery. And Satan created HMOs. The end. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. One of my least favorite drugs, Lipitor, from the Lipitor website. Anybody know about Lipitor for high cholesterol? It does lower cholesterol. But they say on the ad that Lipitor has not been shown to prevent heart disease or heart attacks. Interesting to know. With this new drug, cholesterol forms outside of the body where it can't clog the arteries. To prevent heart attack, take one aspirin every day. Take it for a jog, then take it to the gym, then take it for a bike ride. All right. I'm not going to go into details on this one, but many of the prescription medications actually deplete vital nutrients to our body. And so this is something that if you're on prescription medications, that you can look up and see what nutrients are interfered with by that particular drug. For example, Lipitor depletes CoQ10, which is a vital heart nutrient, but is depleted by Lipitor, which is usually prescribed for cardiovascular issues or cholesterol problems. And so I'm gonna move through that a little bit. Let me see here.
Jeremy, I have a question.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people are always, like, you know, they advertise a lot of, like, the Centrum vitamins and also there's take all these vitamins, and really the way your body breaks down the vitamins, I mean, the side effects can also cause liver damage. So what is a better way to take in all the vitamins you're supposed to be taking in without causing damage to all your other organs?
Right, right.
That does your body really actually absorb to help?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of the, especially the stuff over the counter, like your Centrum, Centrum Silver and Centrum Complete, and all of these, a lot of these are they use synthetic vitamins. Okay, which is synthetic vitamins are produced in a lab, and they actually have studies on a lot of synthetic vitamins that can cause health problems. And so I say to stay away from your average over-the-counter cheap vitamin mineral, because a lot of them have that in there. If you look on the back of the ingredients on a vitamin and you're not sure, look at the vitamin E on there, and it'll say D or DL tocopherol. Okay. If it has the DL, I remember the L's for lousy. The DL is a synthetic version of vitamin E, which has actually been shown to be harmful in studies. So that's one way, just a quick look at a vitamin on the back and say, is this one good? Could this have good ingredients in it? Also, one thing that's used in a lot of vitamins and minerals is calcium carbonate. calcium carbonate is the least absorbable calcium that's out there, but it's really cheap. And so it's put in a lot of products that, and we hear a lot about calcium, and we need calcium. But how much our body can absorb of that is very little. So you have to do your research on that and look for talk to your health provider. I've found that a lot of times health food stores. Does anybody go to a health food store? We like Mama Jean's, except that we spend way too much money there. But Mama Jean's, a lot of these places, the people that work there, they know their stuff about these products, and a lot of times you can get good information about what quality whole food type vitamins are available. All right. All right. NSAIDs are ibuprofen and naproxen deplete folic acid. These are possible causes of folic acid deficiencies. Aspirin depletes vitamin C and calcium and folic acid and vitamin B5. Aspirin can cause anemia, weakness, fatigue, hair loss, brittle nails, irregular heartbeat, muscle weakness, fatigue, edema. The list goes on there. For sake of time, I'm just kind of buzzing through this area. But the information's out there. I was on a low carbohydrate diet for a week and lost 3 inches off my smile. Anybody done low carbohydrate diets before? It's tough, man. It's tough. Our bodies like those carbs. Pollution. Pharmaceutical and personal care products are entering the rivers from sewage treatment plants or leaching into groundwater from septic systems. The waterways in the United States contain residues of birth control pills, antibiotics, hormones, antidepressants, painkillers, shampoos, and many other chemical compounds. That's scary. Exposure to the following has been linked to disease and disability. Pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, preservatives, solvents, carbon monoxide, fertilizers, industrial chemicals, and heavy metals. We're exposed to these chemicals at a much higher level than we ever have been in our history. All right. Pastor Kimmy wanted me to touch on nitrates. Yeah. Our military exposed to these things.
I'm an agent. I was Vietnam, and I'm just sprayed with Agent Orange on a regular basis. It's not been fun.
I have a lot of patients that have had that and a lot of health problems that aren't recognized by the government as being caused by that, but it's definitely there. Nitrates are added to processed meats as a preservative, coloring, and flavoring. They convert to nitrosamines at high heat, which is and those nitrosamines are carcinogenic, which means they cause cancer. So these are oftentimes in our processed meats, a lot of our hot dogs, a lot of our bolognas, a lot of our Spam, bacon. I was trying to avoid that one. Can we not? Yes, we fry hottest. I was trying to leave out bacon, but he had to bring it up. Bacon has a lot of preservatives, nitrates in it. Heterocyclic amines are formed when processed meat is cooked at a high temperature. So we've already got nitrates that are carcinogenic. When we cook these meats at a high temperature, that forms these heterocyclic amines that are also carcinogenic, and it's worse on the blackened parts. Who likes a really nice black rimmed hot dog, likes their bacon crispy, and that is actually the worst for us. It's interesting because the USDA that regulates processed meat says they have to add some vitamin C in there to reduce the formation of some of those nitrosamines. And so one thing that I do and one thing I'd recommend is, as a red-blooded American, occasionally I'm going to have a hot dog. When we go down and watch the Chiefs, I'm going to eat a hot dog. but I might pop a couple of tablets of vitamin C to reduce the oxidative damage and the conversion of some of those chemicals into the carcinogenic forms. So something that might be helpful. BPA, this is probably one of the scariest ones that we're exposed to today. Chemical used to make strong, resilient plastics and coatings. BPA mimics estrogen, causes infertility, cancer, ADHD, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and reduced IQ. One of the researchers from the University of Missouri-Columbia says, to date, there have been around 1,000 animal studies on BPA, and the vast majority show that it causes or is linked to many health problems, from alterations in fertility to increased risk for cancers and cardiovascular problems to impaired brain development. BPA is in a lot of our plastic bottles. A lot of our canned goods, if you look inside, are lined with a see-through layer of plastic that keeps that from corroding. You know, that keeps the can from corroding. Thermal printer receipts. You know, you guys, when they hand us those receipts, and they're slippery and they're shiny. Those receipts are covered in BPA. And within 30 seconds, we can absorb BPA straight out of a receipt from Walmart or Dollar General right into our bodies. And so what I encourage you to do is, one thing is to don't reduce what you eat out of plastic. And for goodness sake, do not cook or heat things up in plastic. I've seen moms that don't know better heating up their milk their baby's milk in a plastic bottle, and especially when we warm up what's ever in that plastic, we can really release those plastics into the food that we're cooking. Whether it's throwing something in the microwave, don't throw it in a plastic bowl in the microwave. Don't cover that food in plastic wrap, right, and heat it up. We have to be careful of those things, and reduce our use of canned items. When we can, prefer to use frozen. If you're going to do vegetables, for example, choose some vegetables that are frozen versus canned. Okay, those peas or those green beans that you might eat. Choose things that are in glass over plastic when you can. We're not going to avoid these things altogether, but if we limit our exposure to these items, we're gonna live a lot longer, healthier lives. And if you don't need that printer receipt, just tell the clerk that you don't need it and ask them to throw it away for you. Okay? If you can avoid touching those receipts, we'll be in better shape. Antiperspirants. In a 2007 study published in the Journal of Inorganic Biochemistry, researchers tested breast samples from 17 breast cancer patients who had undergone mastectomies. The women who used antiperspirants had deposits of aluminum in their outer breast tissue. Concentrations of aluminum were higher on the tissue closest to the underarm than it was in the central breast. And the ingredients in antiperspirants is aluminum. In fact, that's the antiperspirant part that keeps us from sweating is aluminum. And where is our highest concentration, one of our highest concentrations of lymph nodes in our body? Right under here. So be careful with that. There you can, if you do some research, you can find deodorants. Deodorants typically don't have, if it just says deodorant on the label, typically doesn't have antiperspirant in it. It will say on the container if it has antiperspirant. And if it has antiperspirant, likely it's aluminum, and we should probably limit that or avoid it. Yes?
I think the chalky looking ones usually have aluminum.
Yes, those chalky ones that block those pores, right, which is actually what keeps us from sweating, has aluminum, but we absorb that into those pores. So look into other options in that department that don't have aluminum, especially females that have breast cancer risk, because the highest 50% of breast cancers are found in the outer portion, the upper outer portion of the breast, closest to the axilla, to the underarm. All right. The following newfangled fats can cause cancer, heart disease, immune system dysfunctions, sterility, learning disabilities, growth problems, and osteoporosis. All hydrogenated oils, partially hydrogenated oils, trans fat. So that's your vegetable oils and your margarine. We used to be told, right, that we should avoid that butter, right? We need to avoid that butter and eat this margarine, this fake fat. Now what are they saying? After 50 years later, that margarine's not healthy for you. Oops, sorry, we messed up. Here, you probably should eat that butter. Soy, corn, and safflower oils aren't the best for us. Cottonseed oil, canola oil, and all fats that are heated to high temperatures and processed and frying. So deep fat fried stuff, those fats break down into cancer-causing chemicals, and the fats deteriorate, and they just get bad after they're heated. And you know, and I used to work. Anybody worked fast food before? My first job was McDonald's. You know, when we'd leave that oil in there as long as we can get away with it. You know, managers say, you probably need to change that oil. We'll do it tomorrow. And that oil, the more it gets used, the more toxic it becomes. And then we fry those French fries in it day after day. These traditional fats have nourished healthy population groups for thousands of years, include butter, coconut, palm, and sesame oils, olive oil, flax oil, fish oil. Okay, all sources of healthy fats. Okay, so we've kind of been told a lie about fat. We've been told for years that we need to eat less fat, right? Americans, because of heart disease, we've been told for over 30 years that we've got to get the fat out. Our cholesterol is too high. We've got to lower our fat intake. We've got to get the cholesterol out of our diet. But what has in the United States today is eating less fat than ever. But what has happened to heart disease? Has it gone down? Heart disease has gone skyrocketed, actually. But what? We're eating less cholesterol. We're eating less fat, right? Well, coming to find out, we made another mistake. Sorry. But fat wasn't the enemy that we thought it was. And now they've lifted restrictions on eggs. You know, we were told that eggs had too much cholesterol. You can only have one a day. Now they know that eating cholesterol does not necessarily cause heart disease, and hasn't been proven to even raise our cholesterol significantly. And so a lot of us have been told, taught wrong, and still sometimes are being taught wrong through the media. But fat's not our enemy. Sugar is our enemy. Okay, sugar and too many carbohydrates are our enemy. Insulin is really what takes all of those calories and shoves it in our fat cells. Okay, that's what insulin does. It's like the gatekeeper. It just shovels it right in there. And what triggers insulin release? What triggers insulin? Sugar, right? Sugar triggers insulin release, and then insulin grabs that and just shoves it in our fat cells. And that's one of the biggest causes of obesity, is just simply too much sugar causing too much insulin, which is shoving all that fat in storage. Yeah.
And what's the direct health consequences? Isn't it pancreas?
The pancreas is what secretes insulin, yeah.
And that is, pancreatic cancer is out the roof, isn't it?
Yeah, pancreatic cancer is one that's definitely not slowing down. In fact, it's increasing. And I believe we're asking way more of our pancreas than we should these days. And the pancreas is getting burned out. And that's why you've heard of the Atkins diet. Anybody done the Atkins diet? I've done the Atkins diet before. The Atkins diet basically was invented by a medical doctor who said that if we don't eat sugar or carbohydrates and we eat only fat or protein, that you'll lose weight. And promotes just eating all the bacon and butter and meat and cheese and dairy that you want. And if you want sugar, have some aspartame laden soft drinks. But overall, that program works. People can eat fat all day long and eat protein all day long and lose weight. Has everybody done it before? It's not very fun, but it works. And the reason it works, I don't agree with the methodology behind it. The reason it works is it's not triggering insulin release, right? There's no sugar, there's no carbs, so we're not shoveling out the insulin out of the pancreas to grab stuff and put it in our fat cells. Our body has to learn how to burn fat for energy, and so they can lose weight hand over fist by doing that. All right, 12 steps that we can take now. We need to be careful with our processed meats. We need to be careful how we cook our processed meats if we have those. We need to avoid sugar and keep and food that quickly turns into sugar, like our simple carbohydrates, our pastries, our white bread, our crackers, our chips. Keep our salt intake under control. Better yet, just switch to sea salt. Does anybody use sea salt? Sea salt has been shown to be much more healthy, and the reason is because it's not processed. They have all the minerals are still in there with the sodium, and so people don't tend to have the same health consequences when they use sea salt. So if you like salt, switch to sea salt or Celtic salt or Himalayan salt. They call it all kinds of different things. And you'll be healthier for it. Regular old table salt is where we're going to get into trouble, especially if we have blood pressure issues. Table salt is bad for us. Avoid as much fast food and processed food as possible. Break old habits. Okay. Take a high-quality multivitamin, mineral, and fish oil supplement. If anybody asks me at the office what if I think they should just take something for insurance, and I'll suggest maybe a good multivitamin, mineral, and I believe we can get a lot of nutrients just through our diet by eating right. If we eat the right stuff, we get fruits and vegetables and stuff in there. But agriculture today, our tomatoes don't have the same nutrients that tomatoes used to have in them, right? Our soil's depleted. Even our fruits and vegetables just don't have the nutritional value that they once did. And so sometimes taking a multivitamin or mineral is a good idea just to give you a little extra insurance. But don't go for the cheapest thing on the shelf at Dollar General because likely it's cheaply made and contains synthetic vitamins that your body doesn't know how to use anyway. Talk to a health professional, nutritionist. Talk to some pharmacists are really good with knowing their stuff about nutrition. Talk to, even if you have a nutritional or a health food store, a lot of times the people there are knowledgeable about good quality products. And fish oil is a great product to use. In America, we don't get enough good quality seafood here in the Midwest, do we? Did we get fresh seafood here? Not very often. And if we do, we batter it and fry it, right? So we don't get a lot of those omega-3 fats that are so helpful to keep our brain healthy, to keep our heart healthy, to keep our cholesterol levels under control. And so if you're not taking one, I'd suggest to maybe consider taking a good quality fish oil. Yeah, Ben?
Do you have a website or anything that has suggestions of what to for when you're in the store or something of that nature? You're saying it's good quality.
Mm-hmm.
Brands or anything? Do you have something like that?
Well, you know what? I can get that for you. I'm pretty sure I can find something that offers suggestions about things that have been vetted out a little bit about quality. Yeah, I'll check that and see if I can get that for you guys. A lot of us are dehydrated. Make sure we're drinking plenty of water. I've had patients turn their health around just simply by increasing their water intake to closer to 8 glasses a day. Helps your skin, helps your elimination, helps your blood pressure, reduces aches and pains. Just simply good quality water. Yeah.
What do you consider a glass?
8 ounces. 8 ounces is a typical recommendation. So they usually recommend 64 ounces a day for health. A lot of times when I'm working with patients that have chronic health problems, I'll tell them to go higher than that and maybe go half your body weight in ounces a day if you're having chronic health problems. So if you weigh 200 pounds, then you would drink 100 ounces a day. That's a lot of water. And at first you'll be going to the bathroom a lot, but you'll be surprised at the health improvements by increasing water. Yeah. Well, the typical city water, tap water can be problematic sometimes because of things like chlorine and fluoride. We could talk all night about some of those things. So I like reverse osmosis water. So when you're looking at, if you do have to use a bottled water, I'm not really excited about bottled water because what's it in? Plastic. And can we guarantee that plastic didn't get hot any time between it got from the factory to the store shelf? I doubt it. So that's a concern. But if you do need bottled water, look on there and look for, it'll say reverse osmosis on there as the filtration. A lot of the grocery stores that you can go and fill up those big containers with water, a lot of those are reverse osmosis filters. You can get some to use on top of your sink. You can get some at Lowe's and just put on top of your sink. You can get some you can install under your sink. Reverse osmosis pulls out a lot of the metals, the fluoride, the chlorine, the antibiotics and things like that. Yeah. Yeah, styrofoam's bad. The styrofoam in coffee cups, which I just had downstairs, not the best. It's hot into that styrofoam, and that leaches anything hot will leach chemicals out of the plastic. I think the reason that we're seeing kids that not only are overweight, but it's hard to tell which kids are male or female on their body structure. We have kids going into puberty at 8 years old. It's a lot of it, I believe, it's plastics. Some of these hormone-mimicking chemicals that we're exposed to, that our kids are exposed to from birth, before birth, a lot of these chemicals are found in the umbilical cord already. Our babies are exposed to these chemicals before they even get into our toxic environment. Scary stuff. Avoid fried foods and trans fats. Avoid those fake fats. Try to use some olive oil. If you're gonna deep fry, try to use some coconut oil. Experiment with some of these things if you're not used to it, and look into it because your body will thank you for it. Get some exercise. I can use some more exercise, and we tend to be too busy. And we don't get that in. And exercise has actually been proven in studies to be more effective than prescription antidepressants. Simply exercise, simply walking can be have more benefits than prescription antidepressants. Go to bed at a set time. A lot of us don't get enough sleep. I'm bad about this. I'm a night owl, and I stay up and study and read till midnight, and then go to bed. But we need to get plenty of sleep. Sleep problems is probably a big thing that we see patients for, is people have trouble sleeping. They go to bed, they want to sleep, but they can't shut their mind down, or they wake up at 3 in the morning and then they can't get back to sleep. We need our sleep. Just a general recommendation, sometimes magnesium before bed can be a helpful sleep aid. 500 milligrams of magnesium before bed can be a natural relaxant. Magnesium is our relaxing mineral. We need to make sure that we're moving our bowels daily. If you're not, something's wrong. I had a patient just last week. I said, and we talk about these things, which aren't sometimes comfortable to talk about, but I said, how often do you have a bowel movement? Or I said, are your bowels regular? Yes. How often do you have a bowel movement? About every 4 or 5 days. I said, okay, that may be usual for you, but it's not normal. So we have to evacuate. If stuff settles and stays in here, it putrefies, it produces toxins, and makes us sick. Has anybody ever been constipated before? I mean, honestly, and how you feel after a day or two or more of not going, it's bad. And if that continues day after day after day after day, we're going to have some health consequences for that, and we can fix that. avoid artificial sweeteners, avoid the aspartame. Even I have reservations about Splenda, and I recommend using stevia. Has anybody heard of stevia? Stevia is a plant extract. It's not a chemical, although the versions that the FDA has okayed to be called a sweetener, like the Truvia that's on the shelf, that's made from stevia, but they've chemically changed it so that they could patent it, right? And so I kind of have some concerns about the fake stevias. But regular stevia is actually sold as a nutritional supplement because it's not been approved by the FDA as a sweetener. I won't get into why I believe that, but the stevia is a good alternative if you need something a little sweet, but you don't want to do the fake sweeteners and you want to cut back on sugar. Stevia is a good alternative. You can get it in packets or liquid, and it doesn't have any calories, and it's really, really sweet, and it's just a good choice. All right, pray the Lord gives us strength and wisdom and insight to help us make good choices. I know a lot of times we don't think about praying for the Lord to give us strength in these areas. Lord, sometimes I need help watching my diet. I need strength to not overeat. I need strength to make sure I'm not stopping by, McDonald's every day to grab that bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. It's difficult in our day and age, and the foods that we're exposed to actually create cravings for more of the same. And so even though we know that we shouldn't have certain foods, we consume those, and we just crave more of that same food because of that. All right. Our body is an amazing gift from God. How we take care of our body is our gift back to God. Amen? All right. Well, I've got, you guys submitted some questions that I'm going to go through and answer some questions. Does anybody have any questions just over what we've talked about so far before I get started on those? Yeah.
What about the cuts?
Oops. Okay. I think if you're going to get a meat or ham or turkey, it'd be good to go to the deli and just get it sliced right there instead of going and getting the prepackaged stuff that's swimming in those nitrates and other processed chemicals, so preservatives. So that's a good idea. Yeah.
They make the good stuff at Walmart. It has no nitrates, and so you can buy it at Walmart.
Yeah. You can buy versions that have less preservatives in there, and they'll advertise that. So read your labels. If you do hot dogs, get the all beef hot dogs. Don't get the ones that say chemically processed chicken in there. You don't want to see what that looks like. It's scary stuff that they put in there. They do taste good. I agree. But they just grind all that chicken up and just put everything in there. It's disgusting. Yeah.
I have a question about a sweetener. I just noticed
Xylitol. Yeah, xylitol is a sugar alcohol, and it is sweet, and it does spike blood sugar less than traditional sugar. So a lot of people use it as an alternative sweetener. And as far as everything that I know about it, it's a pretty good choice. So I would say give it a try. It still can raise blood sugar, so diabetics have to be careful with it because it still could be a problem if you overdid it. But it does. It has a lower glycemic index and is a good choice. Yeah.
Like a person in my field of work, I deal with a lot of chemicals, being a mechanic, oils, brake cleaning, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what can I do other than, we get rubber gloves that we can wear, but just as well as I do, if you're in a hurry.
You're not going to grab those gloves.
In my field,
Yeah.
You don't have much, sometimes you put them on, sometimes you don't.
Mhm.
Is there anything you can really do to kind of
Mhm.
handle that?
Yeah. Every once in a while, what you might do is to use go through some detoxification of your, especially your liver. Everything that we're exposed to, our liver has to make sure that stuff doesn't kill us, right? It breaks it down and detoxifies it so it doesn't cause major damage. But our liver, it takes a toll on our liver doing that all the time. And so that's something that I would recommend. And get with me later. I can give you some suggestions on things to use. But detoxing our body is important. And there are some natural stuff that you can use to help your body get rid of those chemicals and cleanse them. I'd make sure you're drinking a lot of water. I would make sure that your bowels are moving regular, because we absorb stuff that we touch, and that's why we can get in trouble with things like antiperspirants and chemicals in our makeup, and not my makeup, but our personal hygiene products, and because we can absorb those chemicals right into our skin. And so I would do your best to avoid contact with them whenever possible. There's things you can do to help detoxify your body. All right, I'll answer more questions, but I want to hit the ones that were presented beforehand, and then we can talk about other things there. All right, and let's see here. Another thing with Pastor has shared about health stuff and encouraging us to make better choices. Both him and Angie, I hope they don't mind me saying that, have fairly recently had just a complete blood workup done at our office, and honestly, I can say that they walk the walk. They were some of the best blood work that I've seen in my office in a long time, and they weren't perfect, but it was darn close, so I thought that was impressive to me, that they take their health seriously, and they take care of themselves. I was impressed by that. All right. Let's see here. If I have changed my diet and I'm eating no sugar and little dairy, what kinds of vitamins should I be taking? No sugar and little dairy. Well, not necessarily have to take a vitamin. We've been preached to that we get calcium from dairy, right? Do we hear that all the time on the media? We've got to drink our milk to get our calcium. One thing I ask patients is, where do grown cows get their calcium? Do you see grown cows limping around with osteoporosis and broken hip? No, they have strong bones. And where do they get calcium from? The grass. Actually, there's better calcium utilization and absorption from leafy greens than there is from dairy. Not saying that you necessarily have to avoid dairy, but don't feel like if you're cutting dairy out because you're wanting to cut calories, or maybe you're allergic to dairy, which is a huge thing these days, that you're lacking anything necessarily. If you're eating a healthy diet, you don't have to take anything extra. If you don't have a gallbladder, what is normal for your elimination process to be? That's a good question. Gallbladder is kind of treated as an extra part. I don't believe God gave us extra parts. I think we were supposed to keep those, right? And they probably served a purpose. And gallbladder is very involved in our digestion and utilization of nutrients, especially fats. And so if we don't have a gallbladder, it's going to affect our digestion, and we won't be able to break down and utilize fats as efficiently as we did when we had a gallbladder. And it can affect bowels. I've seen it go both ways. It can slow down bowel function. I've seen it speed up bowel function. And so the same thing is, even whether you have a gallbladder or not, you should be going every day, at least once, and preferably 2 or 3 times a day is a normal elimination. And if you're having trouble and you don't have a gallbladder and you're still having digestive problems or discomfort or bloating or indigestion or pain, what I would recommend doing is using a supplement that contains bile salts. Bile salts taken supplementally with meals kind of mimic what the gallbladder used to do in aiding in digestion of fats and utilization of fats. So that's something, if you don't have a gallbladder and you're having digestive problems, you might want to look into doing that, and a lot of times it really helps. Is it normal for it to hit you and better find a place to stop? No, that's not necessarily a gallbladder thing, but you might want to try the bile salts and see if that doesn't regulate things. And if it doesn't, then you might have some deeper issues with like irritable bowel or problems like that. If you're having too frequent bowel movements or too soft of bowel movements, you might want to try adding a probiotic. Has anybody heard about probiotics or good bacteria? Our gut is loaded with good, healthy bacteria, and that's really important that that's in there. And sometimes our lifestyle and our 21st century diets are kind of hard on our good guys, our good bugs in there. And so putting some of those good bacteria, friendly bacteria back in there can make a huge difference. Okay, and that's where I would start next. And then if we're still having too frequent, then maybe we might be dealing with an allergy, maybe something that we're eating or we're sensitive to, and that can really affect our bowel function. All right. What can I do for low thyroid? That's a difficult question. First thing I would recommend doing is to get tested to make sure your thyroid is not an autoimmune related thyroid problem. First of all, 90% of low thyroids in the United States are due to autoimmune disease. 90%. And so most people that have a low thyroid may even be being treated for it and don't know that their immune system is actually attacking their body. So that's one thing to figure out if you're also dealing with an autoimmune disease and not just a low thyroid. If your thyroid is very low, you might need some nutrition to help strengthen your thyroid. Iodine is a good nutrient to strengthen thyroid function. I'd recommend you can get these online. Either iodoral or iodozyme are great iodines for thyroid strengthening. Selenium and zinc are needed for thyroid hormone production, so supplementing there might be helpful. And sometimes you might need some thyroid hormone replacement. If your thyroid's really low, you may need some thyroid hormone to pick up the difference and to get the thyroid hormone up where it needs to be. And you can do that either prescription or their over-the-counter thyroid hormone supplements. What can you do to boost metabolism? Well, a lot of times if our metabolism's sluggish, it can be due to poor diet. Sometimes we tank our metabolism just by eating junk, too many carbohydrates. Sometimes it could be a hormonal issue. And maybe need to get hormones checked, or thyroid, female hormones, male hormones can affect the metabolism. There's recent studies showing that adding coconut oil to your diet can boost your metabolism and help with weight loss. So getting coconut oil into your diet is helpful. And of course, exercise should be self-evident, but exercise is needed to boost metabolism. If we're not getting enough activity, we're not going to burn calories and our metabolism is going to be sluggish. We need to, another good way to do it, if hormonally we're okay and our physiology is normal, we might need to increase our muscle mass. We need to pick up some weights. We need to strengthen those muscles. And by every pound of muscle we add, we burn an extra 50 calories, they say, a day, just by maintaining that pound of muscle. And so if we add 5 pounds of muscle, that's quite a bit of calories burned and not doing anything extra, just by having that extra muscle on our frame. So getting workout and pumping some iron, getting some guns will help burn some calories. All right. And if I answer your question and I didn't quite get it all, speak up and and if I didn't clarify it good, okay? Because I don't know who asked the questions. I'm just trying to give you a good answer there. What to do when you're tired all the time? Boy, how much of us are just tired all the time? A lot of times, because we're doing it to ourselves, a lot of times we're overcommitted. We are not getting enough sleep. We're not eating good. We are overstressed. So first, make sure you're getting sleep. Okay, if you're overtired, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting at least 7-8 hours a night? If not, we probably need to start there, or fixing it what's broken with your sleep if you can't sleep. Clean up our diet. Get the sugar down. A lot of times, just eating healthier and eating more healthy fats will help us sleep. And if you're still tired and you're doing all that stuff, then maybe see your doctor and get some more further testing. You could be, a common cause of fatigue is low thyroid, which you just talked about. Anemias, iron deficiency or B vitamin deficiency can cause fatigue. If you're tired all the time, there can be several causes, and so that's a difficult question to answer. Yeah.
You told me from my blood work that I probably need to watch my sugar, and I kind of do that already. So I really completely cut it out. I mean, down to just almost nothing. And within a day or two, first of all, I slept all the way through the night, the very same night that you told me that. I slept all through the night for the first time in years. I didn't even wake up. And then a day or two later, I noticed I had so much energy, I just wanted to sprint through my house for no reason. I mean, I was really feeling that. And I think it's just cutting sugar out. That's the only thing I changed, was just the sugar. Because I was drinking water and exercise and all that. But the sugar, it really is, I think sugar is the best thing to compare to sin in our diet. I really do. Sugar's
a big deal. If we can get your sugar down, I can guarantee you'll lose weight and you'll feel better. And most health conditions will respond by just cutting sugar down. It's not easy to do. Our bodies will crave sugar, and a lot of times when we crave sugar, it's because we're having sugar problems. A lot of us have hypoglycemia, where blood sugar drops and we get weak and shaky and cranky and grumpy. And I heard the term the other day called, instead of hungry and angry, they were hangry. Hungry and angry together. And a lot of times it's because we're eating the wrong things and we're not eating on time. We're getting too busy and we're skipping meals. We run out of the house and miss breakfast. We're too busy. We don't take lunch, and our sugar's dropping, and we're setting ourselves up for sugar problems that way. Any info for dry skin and hair? Dry skin and hair can be a sign of dehydration, so make sure you're getting that 8 glasses of water a day. It could simply be dehydrated. Dry skin and hair is a common sign of low thyroid, so consider that. Also can be not enough healthy fats in our diet. Healthy fats that we intake, especially things like coconut oil, omega-3 fats, lubricate our joints, lubricate our skin too. Yeah.
I got to interrupt you on that because you told me one day my back was a little stiff. You said, "Are you taking any omega fats?" And I was like, "No." And so I went and did it, and it took my soreness out of my back. Just taking fish oil.
Just taking fish oil. Fish oil is also a natural anti-inflammatory, and so inflammatory conditions respond well to that. Joint problems respond well. Cholesterol issues are improved by omega-3s. Cardiovascular risk is reduced. Brain health is improved. It's hard to find something that those healthy fats don't improve in our health, and we don't tend to get enough of them in our diet without supplementing. Okay. What treatment options are there for cutaneous lupus? That's a big question there. Lupus is an autoimmune disease, and which means that the immune system is attacking the tissues, right? The immune system has got confused and is attacking the tissues. And so one thing that I like to do is when I look at a health problem, I don't know if you guys can see this or not.
There's a darker one up there.
There's a what?
Darker marker.
A dark marker, would that be better? I just got green. Is that darker? Okay. All right. And this is, okay. All right, this is my tree here. These are branches, okay? And let's say we have high blood pressure. And let's say we're tired. We have fatigue. And let's say we have chronic pain. And let's say we are, let's see here. Okay, let's say we're having trouble with weight. Okay? And we have all these symptoms going on, and where I believe that medicine often falls short is in symptomatic treatment of different conditions, right? If we have high blood pressure, we might get a prescription for that, right? We might get a beta blocker or some atenolol, and that might help that branch there with the high blood pressure. And we're fatigued, so we might hit that Starbucks a couple extra times, you know. We'll do something to pep us up and try to battle that fatigue. We're in pain, so we might either do something over the counter, right, for the pain. We might use some ibuprofen. If that's not working, we might do something stronger, prescription strength to help with that pain. We're a little bit overweight, so we might try a crazy diet or something to try to lose that weight. But oftentimes, you guys might not be able to see it down here, but oftentimes our trouble is down here at the root of this tree. And there are root causes that could explain all of these symptoms. So rather than treating the symptom, let's try to get to the underlying cause that's affecting that. So down here we might find that this person might have a low thyroid. That can affect blood pressure, that can affect their fatigue, can increase inflammation. They might have infection. They might have inflammation, abnormal inflammation in their body that's encouraging them to be in pain, that's encouraging vascular inflammation, causing the high blood pressure. And so what I do when I approach things from a functional medicine perspective, not that we shouldn't treat symptoms, because sometimes our symptoms need treated, right? If our blood pressure is through the roof, we probably need to take something to get it down. But is taking that high blood pressure medication fixing the underlying cause of the blood pressure? It's not. It's treating the symptom, but it's not correcting anything. As soon as we go off the blood pressure medication, what happens? The blood pressure shoots right back up. But we can get to the underlying cause, and so that's the way that I like to look at things. And so when we're dealing with something like lupus or autoimmune disease, there are certain things that we could use to maybe help the skin, to help with inflammation and irritation, but ultimately the problem is the immune system has malfunctioned, and so we to really correct lupus, we need to figure out what's gotten the immune system ticked off and why is it attacking me, right? And so we might look at things like the gut. Almost all autoimmune disease has a gut connection. There's infection. There is not enough good bacteria. There's yeast, maybe parasites, maybe bacteria overgrowth. There's what they call leaky gut syndrome. Anybody had heard of leaky gut before? Wear and tear causes food proteins to get into the bloodstream, and the immune system sees these odd food proteins and thinks that must be a bad guy, and labels that food as a bad guy. And before you know it, it labels your tissues as a bad guy and starts attacking them too. And so there's a lot of deep levels when you're dealing with autoimmune disease, toxicities, heavy metals, all kinds of things. But I've seen some things as simple as adding vitamin A and vitamin D and fish oil to help with cutaneous lupus. I've heard that Tums are bad for you. If so, why? Tums, I don't think are inherently bad. They're just calcium, right? Calcium carbonate, which does tend to, if we have acid indigestion or discomfort, and we take Tums, it can kind of reduce and buffer that acid, right? And make that heartburn not quite so bad. So Tums aren't necessarily bad for us, but again, what are we treating with Tums? We're treating a branch, right? We're treating a symptom of heartburn, when usually the problem is not necessarily too much acid. I don't believe that God put acid in our stomach. He put it in there for a reason. And why is it bothering us? That's where we need to figure out what's bothering us. Why are we having heartburn? And if we can figure that out, then we don't need the Tums, right? Yes.
Don't some antacids have aluminum in them?
Yes. Yeah, that's true. There is some aluminum, so we could get in trouble with too much aluminum. What I'm more scared about is acid blockers, like your my mind went blank. Pepsid, Nexium, Prevacid, that are actually shutting down acid production pretty much altogether. If you look, a lot of those acid blockers aren't supposed to be used more than 2 weeks at a time. And a lot of times we're put on those drugs, or we take them over the counter for years, shutting down acid production. Well, our tummy, our body needs acid in the stomach to break things down. That's what it's in there for. So if we shut it down completely, especially for weeks and months and years on end, we're going to have some health consequences because of that. So usually if we have heartburn, there's a problem there. Either maybe we have an infection. There's a nasty little bacteria called H. pylori that likes to get into that stomach lining and cause what they call gastritis or inflammation of that stomach lining. Sometimes maybe we don't have a gallbladder. That can sometimes mimic some heartburn. Sometimes we're self-inducing this with poor diet and too much processed foods and sugars. Sometimes we might be oftentimes lacking hydrochloric acid to better break things down. And that causes the stomach to produce even more caustic acids than hydrochloric acid. And sometimes we may be deficient in digestive enzymes, can sometimes produce heartburn. So getting to the source of the heartburn is the way to go. Not that we can't use those items temporarily, but if we're needing to use those all the time, there's something broken, and we need to figure out what that is and fix it. Okay. Alrighty. All right. I had a question on ADD and ADHD. Just a couple of quick things. Go back to dyes. Look at dyes in the diet. Look at sugar in the diet, and look for potential food allergies. We have a lot of kids that are sensitive to things like gluten and dairy. And that's causing hyperactivity in them. They may be sensitive to things like MSG. They may be sensitive, like our daughter was, to red dye 40. Red dye 40 is a huge one. You'll be surprised how many times that will fix it. But get them off the pop. Get them off all the sweetened drinks and cereals and snacks. If we cut that back, we'll be in much better shape. Labels on the foods that we buy, how accurate are the labels? Labels are pretty accurate in the area that they are careful to list the ingredients, and there's pretty heavy fines if they don't follow those recommendations. But ingredient lists can be tricky if you're not used to reading labels or don't know what you're looking for. You might want to educate yourself in those areas. But ingredients are listed in descending order of weight on the label. So at the top of whatever the ingredient list is, that's what's mostly in there. A lot of times you'll see water at the top of the list, right? Because a lot of things just got a lot of water in there. And then it'll go down in descending order from that. What's the difference between good carbs compared to bad carbs? Let's see here. Probably the easiest way would be to say that there are complex carbohydrates and there are simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are things like your sugar, your white bread, your white flour, your white pasta, your white potatoes. These are simple carbohydrates, meaning that your body doesn't have to work hard to break those down to get to the sugar. They're rapidly converted to sugar in our bodies, and that's where they get the name simple. Complex carbohydrates are things like whole grains and legumes and vegetables and fruits that have a lot of naturally occurring fiber in there. And although some of those still have sugar in them, it's more difficult for our body to get to that sugar because it has to break down and get through that fiber too while it's digesting. And so it causes a much slower release of sugar into the bloodstream and tends to cause much less problems. And so we need more complex carbohydrates and less simple carbohydrates. Does that make sense? So when it says carbs on the label, what all is in the total carbs? The total carbs includes sugar, complex carbohydrates, and fiber are in that. When it says total carbohydrates on something, it has all of those three in there. And so sometimes it's difficult to know unless you start educating yourself what kind of carbohydrates might be in there. Are they simple? Are they complex? Most things that come in a box that you're looking at on the carbohydrates on the box, are they going to tend to be simple or complex? Most of those are going to be simple, aren't they? Or they wouldn't be in a box to begin with. But the one thing is be careful with on labels, be careful of serving sizes. And this has tricked me a number of times. Looking at something that says it has this many calories or has this many carbohydrates or this many grams of sugar for a serving. And you assume that bag is a serving. That bag may be 5 servings. And you think you're getting 100 calories and you're getting 500 calories because you read the label wrong. So look at serving size because you might be thinking you're doing good there, but the serving size may be half of what you consumed, and so that can be tricky. All right, supplements like creatine and whey protein safe to take for athletes. They are safe and they are beneficial. Creatine, the only thing is if you had some type of kidney weakness or kidney disease, you have to be careful with creatine, but otherwise it's safe to use. It increases water into the muscle cells, so it actually enlarges muscles, makes muscles look bigger, and makes them grow. And it actually improves endurance of muscles so that if you're working out, you can lift longer, which breaks down muscle and causes muscle to build back faster. So creatine's a safe and natural supplement if you're wanting to put on muscle. And whey protein is probably one of the safest and most studied forms of protein to put on muscle too. The thing you have to be careful with is some protein shakes and stuff is sometimes they add other stuff in there. Sometimes they add a lot of sugar in there to make it taste better. So if you're also trying to lose weight and put on muscle, and you're throwing 15 grams of sugar a serving in there with your 20 grams of protein, it's gonna work against you. Creatine monohydrate is the form you want to use. 5 grams probably after a workout to help put on muscle mass. Unless you have an allergy to whey, to milk, and whey is a milk protein. And so some people have trouble digesting dairy, and so whey might not be the choice for you. But there are vegetable or plant-based protein shakes that you can get too that use other forms. Antidepressant meds versus a natural fix. That's a difficult one. I believe antidepressants are overprescribed, but they do serve a purpose. And when somebody is deeply depressed, they need some relief, and sometimes they need some quick relief. Whereas something that might be more natural might take a little more time. But again, depression is usually caused again, but there's some underlying mechanisms that are going awry. We're not depressed because we have an antidepressant deficiency, right? We're depressed because some physiology in us is not working right. It could be commonly there's hormone imbalance is a cause of depression commonly. you can have neurotransmitter imbalances with serotonin and dopamine and epinephrine, norepinephrine, things like this that can be tested. Vitamin D deficiency, B vitamin deficiency, omega-3s are helpful for depression. Again, exercise, which we mentioned earlier, is a natural antidepressant. But again, there can be several underlying causes. You can't just say depression, you need to take this, although there are some good studies on things like omega-3s and even St. John's wort, which is an herb that can be helpful for depression. But figuring out where the imbalance is will help you to overcome that depression. And a lot of times depression is spiritual. We need to figure out what's going south in our spiritual life, and oftentimes that can be the source of our depression. Just getting back to Jesus and spending time with Him and working through our issues will oftentimes correct that too. And the same thing with overeating. I've always had a tendency to be a stress eater. Anybody else a stress eater? Or you're bored and you just eat, because it's there and you like the taste of it. And so one thing I've noticed is when my weight really starts to go up, I have to check myself, because one of two things. Either I'm getting too busy, which is making me make poor dietary choices. I'm getting to the fast food place too often. I'm grabbing stuff out of the cabinet that for snack foods and such, and I'm eating poorly there. Or a lot of times I find that overeating again is tied back to my spiritual life. Where's my satisfaction in? And if it is in the food, and I'm craving all of this, there's a void that I'm trying to fill there. And maybe there's there is a better way to fill that void, and usually it's getting my spiritual life checked up and getting back on track with my Bible study and my Jesus time. Does that make sense? Restless legs. Anybody heard of restless legs? Anybody experienced it? That's rough stuff. Restless leg, if you don't know, is a condition where you try to slow down and relax. Sit down, lay down, go to sleep, and you cannot get your legs comfortable. And they twitch, and they are uncomfortable, and you have to move them constantly, and you can't get relaxed. Most of the time, restless leg is either due to calcium, magnesium, or a vitamin D deficiency. Or maybe more than one of those. So you might want to get those levels checked, maybe do a blood test, get those levels checked. You might want to try supplementing at safe levels on those nutrients. But usually one or more of those will correct restless legs. There can be other things. There can be nerve irritation. People have had low back injuries, or there can be sciatica, where the nerve that goes down the legs being irritated. And that's not a true restless leg. That's more of a nerve problem. But those are generally will help restless legs. All right, why is, I don't have very many more here, thanks for holding in there. Why is gluten-free better than non? We could probably spend another night talking about that one. But gluten-free is not necessarily, just because a product says gluten-free, doesn't necessarily mean it's healthier than the product, than the regular product. Gluten-free just means that they've taken the gluten out of that product, and a lot of times you got to be careful if you're trying to cut back on gluten and you're eating maybe a gluten-free alternative, that they haven't put a whole lot of other carbohydrates and flours that are unhealthy for you as well. Gluten is a big problem for a lot of people, though. We hear a lot about gluten these days, and it's hard to know what to believe. But if you think about it, the wheat that we have now, modern wheat, is nothing like wheat that our grandparents ate. Okay. The modern revolution of agriculture and the things that they've done to modernize wheat production and harvesting, to producing what they call high yield grains, and between crossbreeding and hybridization of the wheat, they've changed the wheat, and now most wheat 90-some% of the wheat that we consume is what they call dwarf wheat. And what along all these changes that they've made it easier to increase the yield per acre of wheat, they've never once thought, is this going to affect human consumption? Is this changing that we're making to the wheat affecting people? Well, no, they just think it's wheat, right? So it must be okay. But this is the problem: is that a lot of people are having immune problems to gluten because of all of these changes in the wheat, and our body does not recognize it as wheat anymore. Not that wheat's inherently bad, but like I said, the wheat is not really wheat anymore. I find we treat a lot of conditions in our office, and we find a lot of people that are gluten sensitive. Everything in gluten sensitivity can go from what we hear about called celiac disease, which is an autoimmune condition, all the way down to just a gluten sensitivity that's not an autoimmune disease. But all of these levels of gluten sensitivity or allergy can cause a wide variety of health problems. And the one thing about wheat, and Sarah has gluten problems, and it really affects her health big time. And so she tries to limit it as much as possible. But if you take a slice of bread, and even whole wheat bread, and you check your sugar after that, and then you another day you take a Snickers bar and you eat it and you check your sugar after, your sugar will climb higher with that slice of wheat bread than it did with that Snickers bar. And that's why I say to be careful with wheat. One, because it is a simple carbohydrate. Even the healthy whole grain, whole wheat products are horrible on blood sugar if you have blood sugar issues. And a lot of people are having allergies and sensitivity to gluten, which can cause a wide variety of health issues. So, but in and of itself, gluten-free doesn't mean healthier. It just depends on your situation. Is the pancreas the reason for diabetes, or is it several reasons? The pancreas is really takes the blunt of the injury from sugar problems, but the pancreas isn't the problem. The amount of insulin the pancreas is secreting isn't the problem. The problem is that we have injured, usually self-inflicted damage to our ability to metabolize and utilize sugar effectively. And so by years and years of simple sugars and carbohydrates, and our sugars going up and down, and the pancreas pumping out insulin every time the sugar goes up, what happens is the cells start to lose their sensitivity to insulin, and they call that insulin resistance, which is where we start getting into pre-diabetes. And insulin resistance means that we had that sugar, and the pancreas says, "Oh my goodness, there's all this sugar. We need to get that sugar out of the bloodstream." It secretes the pancreas, and it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. The cells are yawning, saying, "Yeah, whatever, maybe tomorrow," and they don't pay attention to the insulin, so the sugar is not getting in the cells anymore. It's lingering in the bloodstream. And so from the sugar that used to drop, now the sugar is starting to slowly climb. And then that's when we start to get at risk for diabetes. And the pancreas tries to overcompensate. It tries to pump out more insulin because the cells aren't responding. And the pancreas can actually start to wear down because of just not being able to fix the problem that we create. Do you always have hot flashes? What can you do about them? Hot flashes are generally, not always, but generally a sign of hormone imbalance. And so sometimes we can do, there are natural things to support healthy progesterone and estrogen levels. Sometimes you need to get those levels checked, and some people actually need some hormone support in those areas. I'd be careful with synthetic hormones like Premarin. Has anybody ever had experience with that? Synthetic estrogen especially has been shown to be horrible for our health as far as cancer risk and heart disease. If you do need hormones, they have what they call bioidentical Ben, what do you think about bioidentical versus, I don't know if they've been out long enough to have an opinion on them, but bioidentical hormones so far seem to be safe as far as we know, and are plant-based.
I've seen it increase.
Yeah, and so far I think the research that's out there that doesn't show the increased risk of health problems like the synthetic hormones have done, but we don't have quite the data back on them as we do with things like Premarin. All right. Excess gas production is usually due to digestive weakness. We need to probably improve our diet. One thing that Pastor Kenny mentioned before that I recommended to him, and I've recommended to patients often, is if they have a lot of heartburn or indigestion or a lot of gas or bloating, to try apple cider vinegar in water before meals or even right after meals. Improves the acidity levels in the stomach and can relieve a lot of digestive disturbance. I find it successful a lot of times. But you got to worry about if they need digestive enzymes as a possibility, or there may be some liver or gallbladder issues that are to blame there. But a lot of times, just gas or bloating itself is because we're not breaking down that food when we're supposed to in the stomach or in the intestines, and so that will always produce more gas. And so sometimes digestive enzymes, there's things like Beano, if the beans just rarely tear you up, that break down that protein better. Okay, and I think I've touched on that one. Okay, well, I tried to thoroughly but quickly go through those questions that were submitted. Does anybody have any questions related to those, or have a different question? Yes.
If you can't eat wheat bread and you can't eat white bread, what kind of bread do you eat?
That's a good question, and it really depends on your health problems. And if you are having trouble with blood sugar, or you're having trouble with gluten, and then sometimes you just got to get off of grains altogether. Now there are some if you have gluten problems, there are some gluten-free grains that can be used to make products or to make breads that are gluten-free. And so it really depends on what you're after. If you have a lot of blood sugar problems, you really should probably do away with grains mostly altogether. But overall, of course, if you're not bothered by gluten or wheat, if you're bothered by gluten or wheat, then you could use an alternative source for the flour, and they make those. You can get those at the store these days. Yeah. Ezekiel bread, and that's a sprouted grain bread, and I believe that it doesn't have gluten in it. And as far as I know, that I've heard, it's a good product, especially if you have trouble with gluten. It's not the most flavorful. Cinnamon raisin is not bad. I haven't tried that one. Some gluten-free stuff is rough. I tell you, truthfully, it can be pretty bad. You have to do your research there and trial and error a lot of times, because some of it can be like cardboard. Gluten makes bread wonderfully fluffy and a lot of those melt in your mouth qualities are because of higher content of gluten in there. Okay. Yeah.
Is there any health benefits to, like, say, a 1 to 2 to 3 day fast?
Yeah, there actually is. Fasting has been proving to not only improve detoxification, getting just junk out of our bodies, but it also improves, unless you're hypoglycemic, which you got to be careful with that, but can improve blood sugar levels, and it also actually regular use of fasting actually prolongs life and adds. They've proven that it will actually add years to your life by incorporating some fasting into your routine. Yeah.
You mentioned detox earlier. Do you recommend
A detox what?
a detox?
Yeah, we use different ones through our office, and I can get some that I can share with you that would be helpful. A lot of the really good quality pharmaceutical grade supplement companies will have different versions of a detox product, and so if you can weed through and find your quality companies that do a lot of third-party testing and to their products. A lot of them will have detox powders and detox combinations that you can take. And a lot of times they'll have even diets that you can follow that reduce a lot of the junk and stuff while you do those detoxes that make them even more effective. And so get with me and I'll give you some recommendations there. Yeah.
I work with water. I'm on the distribution side and I work with a real water company and supply water to Brown County. I go to a lot of classes, keep a license up and that type of thing. And on one side of the deal is wastewater treatment systems and the other side is distribution of water systems. And I've stayed in on some of those wastewater systems. They say a lot of those places there that vitamins go through your body and are not nerves or heart type vitamins. And that they find a lot of those in their filtering systems and the wastewater processing plants. So is it better to take, it sounds to me like, a powdered type vitamin that would be absorbed in the water, then you drink it in, and would be absorbed quicker than the stuff that doesn't?
Well, that's a good question. And I talked to a gentleman that was around that with their work too, and they said they found more Centrum vitamins than anything else. A lot of your cheaper tableted vitamins are so hard to break down that they just go right through you, and they're still in the tablet form when they exit as they were when they entered. So there can be some worthless ones. You can, to be on the safe side, you could use products that are capsulized. So at least you know that that's going to get broken down. There are good companies that use tableted bases that aren't rock hard, that actually do testing to prove that coating will be dissolved when it hits the stomach acid, and that will be released at the right time. But again, your cheaper, your cheaper formulas tableted are going to be more problematic that way. And a lot of those don't have the vitamins and minerals that we can really utilize anyway. So be picky with the type of multivitamin that you use. Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier with children ADHD and different allergies. Have you ever come across like a nervous disorder in children due to a food allergy or like that?
Yeah. I've seen it several times. And I found foods are commonly associated with that. Food sensitivities. And you can do elimination diets to try to figure that out. There are good tests that can be run too to figure out what the body's sensitive to. But I tell you, with experience that the most common sensitivities are gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, and corn are the most common allergies in both adults and kids.
You mentioned earlier that they almost crave them. Is that typical that they crave them with
They will usually crave the foods that they're sensitive to. Yeah. And so, and you'll find a lot of these kids are really picky eaters. They only eat a handful of foods and they don't want to eat anything else. And a lot of times they're eating the foods that are harming them, which can be really difficult to change that. Yes.
You know how, with all the testing of foods and production and stuff like that, how a lot of, even like you said, original wheat is not the same wheat that we find today. When a an allergist performs allergies on, testing on you,
Mhm.
are they going off of the allergy reaction you would have if you had that wheat from 50 years ago? Or are they going off the allergy of the wheat that we're getting in our bodies nowadays?
Mhm.
I have sensitivities to a lot of different foods, so like the allergist test would say, oh, you're not allergic to that. But I know from elimination,
Uh-huh.
putting back in, that with all the other combinations of maybe this wheat and that and everything else like that, it
Uh-huh.
causes a reaction inside the body.
Yeah, and that's a good question with what kind of wheat they're using when they do those testing. But one thing I do know is that most testing, allergy testing, is what they call the IgE testing, which is an immediate response allergy. And a lot of times they do the pinprick test with this one, where they poke you several times and they wait for it to whelp up, and if it does, then you're allergic to that food. Those immediate response tests are the kinds that send people to the hospital with anaphylactic reactions, or they swell up, or they can't breathe, or they get hives. Those are typically those types of allergies. What aren't often checked are what they call IgG allergies and IgA allergies, which are more of a delayed onset allergy. But because they're not life-threatening, they're not often tested, and they're largely ignored. So we just test this one type of allergy, the IgE allergy, is generally what's tested, and if they're okay, then we're told that you're not allergic to those. But if we would, and so the IgE test, for example, might say you're not sensitive to gluten. But if we were to test the IgG allergy, which is just a different component of the immune system and how that reacts to that food, the IgG testing might have showed that your gluten allergy was off the charts. But because we only checked this one section of the immune system, and it wasn't one that caused you to have swelling and hives and can't breathe, then we have the false assumption that we don't have a problem with that food. So there's a lot of different types of allergies that we can have, and often they aren't tested for. And if we have multiple foods we're sensitive to, we could have maybe that one food once or twice a week and not have trouble. But if we had that food and this food that we're also sensitive to close together, then we could have a whole bunch of problems. I have patients that was recently, well, and it's not been that recently, but that had rheumatoid arthritis, and they had we did the food allergy checkups on them, and they were sensitive to several things, and we worked on that, and they ended up, even after everything we've done, they were still sensitive to tomatoes. And but they figured out with trial and error that if they had tomatoes once or twice a week and not back to back, that they really didn't notice much health problems from that. But if they had, pizza one day and then tomato on a salad the next day, and then they had some spaghetti sauce the next day, it would flare up their symptoms and they'd have all kinds of problems. All right, well, everybody's bottom's probably tired from sitting this long. But I hope this was helpful for you. I'm happy to answer other questions. If this was helpful, maybe down the road, if Pastor will let me, we'll do it again and maybe cover more specific topics instead of so broad-reaching. I know some of that can be overwhelming. But I hope that there's a few things that you've found that you could do better, or that you could tweak, whether it's diet or lifestyle, that will help move you forward in your health, and will help you be more effective for Jesus. Amen. Okay. All right. Let's close in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity tonight. Lord, we thank you for the many things that you've done and provided so that we can live a healthy life. Lord, we just ask that you would help us to have the knowledge and the wisdom to weed through things that we're bombarded with, Lord, to make healthier choices, Lord, and just to take our health seriously, because you've called us to do that. And Lord, we just give you all the praise and glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, brother. That was excellent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I told you, it's overwhelming. Like you said, don't be overwhelmed, because there's a lot of stuff. Probably most of us seen things that we're like, man, I've done this and I'm not doing that. But just boil it down to a couple simple things. Try to go with the good fats for now. Avoid the aspartame, MSG, minimize your nitrites and nitrates. Drink a lot of water and don't eat as much sugar.
Amen.
Just do that. I mean, if you just do that and try to go out and walk every day. That's why I walk and pray, because I get exercise and I pray. But I really appreciate the quality job he did, and I definitely want him to come back more.
Amen.
And so anyway, God bless you guys, and we'll see you. Is it Sunday, the next thing we got? Yeah, Sunday. See you Sunday.